And this is why Ticketmaster, as a monopoly, as exemplified in the Taylor Swift fiasco that happened this week, shows that it doesn't work. You can't have one company that holds all of the supply. Pretend you live in a city of 2.4 million residents and there's only one gas station. And on that one day, everybody has to go get gas. So what happens? There are going to be long lines. People have to wait for hours and hours, maybe 2, 4, 6, 8 hours. And what happens? Some people have to get out of line because they have to go to work or pick up their kids because they can't wait in line for 5, 6, 7 hours. And what happens when you get to the front of the gas station if you're one of the lucky ones? Right? You probably will have to pay for gas that's incredibly overpriced, right? $50, $100 a gallon, because there's one gas station. So this one gas station can set the price at however much it wants. And what happens when you try to go pay for it? Maybe the credit card machine doesn't work. Maybe you have to pay cash. Maybe it kicks you out of line because you're taking too long. Whatever it is not an updated system. It has no incentive to update a system because it's the only gas station in town and it can do whatever it wants. Now pretend that there are 10 gas stations for the same inventory of gas, right? Or the same supply of gas. Well, what would happen then? Well, people would probably have more of a chance of getting gas because it's spread out amongst many gas stations. The prices of the gas will probably be very competitive because the different gas stations are trying to get business from different consumers. And the machines will probably work because each gas station will update its systems to make sure that its consumers can actually buy gas from it. And this is why Ticketmaster, as a monopoly, as exemplified in the Taylor Swift fiasco that happened this week, shows that it doesn't work. You can't have one company that holds all of the supply, right? Yes, even if Taylor Swift had a limited amount of tickets, that's not in dispute. What's in dispute is how Ticketmaster went about selling those tickets. It put a stranglehold on its consumers. The consumers had no other choice but to go to Ticketmaster, and it basically crashed the system because it wasn't updated or strong enough to take on the number of ticket buyers that came and stood in line. It charged 10 times as much as what consumers thought they were going to pay. The systems crashed because there was no competition. And if there's no competition, then this is a problem. Hi, it's Tyler. So I've gotten a lot of requests for a follow-up to my Taylor Swift video because I didn't want to make it a 30-minute video. I wanted to get it out fast because it was a breaking news story last week about the Taylor Swift Ticketmaster fiasco. I thought today I would go into explaining what a monopoly is and why I believe Ticketmaster is a monopoly and what I think will happen with Ticketmaster and Live Nation in the future, especially now that Congress and the Department of Justice is looking into them. It's very possible that the Department of Justice will sue Ticketmaster and Live Nation, which is its parent company, to potentially break up the monopoly. This is something that's been brewing 10, 12 years in the making since Live Nation merged with Ticketmaster. So this isn't news. It just hasn't been on our consciousness in the kind of very brutal and drastic way that it has been in this past week. Like I said in my last video, I am a big Taylor Swift fan. And this week, I can't help but say it and repeat it, but it's been just effing weird and not so beautiful. I love that song, Snow on the Beach. So anyway, let's go into why Ticketmaster is a monopoly. And there's actually a great Vox, VOX article that came out that I will be referring to for this video. You know, I think a lot of us have had the same experience with Ticketmaster. It constantly glitches, it pushes you out, as so many Taylor Swift fans saw this week, you know, during the pre-sale, because we never even got to the general sale. The pre-sale, you got this pre-sale verified fan code. You were put into a line. Weirdly, you know, I read that people didn't have the chance to put the code in at the beginning, which I think would have made more sense. So I guess 14 million people went online all at the same time during this pre-sale, and people would have that dreaded message up that said 2,000 plus in queue before you, basically. And so many stories of people getting kicked off. They would get to the queue, they would get to the beginning of the queue, they would put the tickets into their baskets, and then it would get lost. So as we saw, Taylor Swift released a statement saying that it was excruciating for her to watch. And although 2.4 million fans were able to get tickets, it certainly felt like they had to go through several bear attacks to get those tickets. Ticketmaster is blaming Taylor Swift. And I totally disagree with that. Ticketmaster is a monopoly because there are very few competitors, and Ticketmaster holds 70% of the marketplace. Now you might say, well, at least they don't hold 100%, or isn't it 100% for a monopoly? And actually, that's not true. The courts have held that as long as it's above 50% of the marketplace, a company can be defined as a monopoly. So some of the issues that people have encountered with Ticketmaster are in the past, and especially with Taylor Swift, are twofold, right? One is the fact that Ticketmaster determines the price of the tickets. They get to decide how much the tickets cost. Fans were told that the tickets would cost somewhere from $40 to $60, but when they actually went into, the map and they were choosing tickets, the tickets were like $600 to $800. And secondly, Ticketmaster is not incentivized to update their systems. And this is something that Senator Klobuchar has stated in her statement, that Ticketmaster does not update and keep its system as the market leader. They should have a system that does not crash on their consumers every 2 seconds, because there's no one else really competing with them in the marketplace, right? There's no healthy competition. So Ticketmaster has no incentive to upgrade their systems. I think this is what Congress is going to be looking into. Whether or not violations have taken place by Ticketmaster or Live Nation, and why is it that tickets are so expensive and that the systems keep crashing? I think those are going to be the two threshold issues that Congress and or the Department of Justice will be looking into. So what people don't realize is, so Ticketmaster is the ticketing system. Live Nation holds all the contracts with the venues. So let's say they hold an exclusive license with SoFi Stadium in LA. And I'll go with LA because I live in LA and that's where I was hoping to buy tickets from. Live Nation holds an exclusive contract with SoFi Stadium. So that says that if an artist like Taylor Swift wants to perform in LA and she wants to go to the biggest venue here, she has to go through Live Nation. And also the tickets have to go through Ticketmaster. Now, this is the case with so many venues all around the country. Live Nation holds the exclusive contract, and as the ticketing system that they also own, it goes hand in hand. So competitors have no other way of competing because they hold all the venue contracts, and because of that, the ticketing system has to go through Ticketmaster. So that, in essence, is a monopoly. So this is confirmed in the Vox article. It says, thanks to a web of exclusivity contracts with artists and venues, consumers usually have to go through Ticketmaster to see the artists they want to see. Artists face limits too, as many arenas and stadiums have Ticketmaster exclusivity deals wherein playing at a venue means using Ticketmaster as their vendor. Usually a company doesn't just go around upsetting its base with website crashes, absurd ticket pricing and fees, and being shut out of tickets. Consumer loyalty matters to most corporations, but Ticketmaster's marketplace dominance allows it to continue on even if it's delivering a horrific experience. And this is great. I love this part of the article, right? It says, we don't go back to restaurants that give us terrible experiences. You leave because there are 20 other ones you can go to. But when you go to Ticketmaster, you prepare yourself for a horrific experience, and you are also prepared to go again and again because there's no other choice, right? There's no other ticketing system that you can go to like Ticketmaster. AOC tweeted, daily reminder that Ticketmaster is a monopoly. Its merger with Live Nation should never have been approved, and they need to be reined in. Break them up. And I tend to agree with that, right? So Vox's article goes on to say they interviewed Krista Brown, who's a senior policy analyst at American Economic Liberties Project, AELP. And she has been interviewed in the Vox article, and she goes on to state, as a fan, the first thing that dealing with monopoly is going to be bad service and a bad experience. Obviously, the Taylor Swift fans can speak to that. Ticketmaster's control of the marketplace makes them a single supplier. Their website crashing is a bottleneck that wouldn't have existed if there were other competitors that people could turn to. Same with the queue of over 2,000 fans. So let's talk about why the merger with Live Nation was so important and why Ticketmaster is now indeed a monopoly. In a way, it wasn't maybe before 2010. In the 90s, Ticketmaster was being investigated for antitrust issues. In the early 2000s, Live Nation was also being investigated. And, I think a lot of us were super young and maybe even not alive. In 1995, Pearl Jam actually went head to head with Ticketmaster trying to prove that it was a monopoly and not wanting to allow Ticketmaster to charge its fans a bunch of fees. It worked with the Department of Justice trying to show that it was a monopoly, but they actually failed. So in the early 2000s, both Ticketmaster and Live Nation had a lot of power on its own. And I think they were probably competing with each other. And there were probably a lot of behind the scenes discussions on how not to compete with each other. And then at some point, I think the heads of their companies just decided, well, instead of stealing each other's market share, let's just merge and share in that. So this created a vertically integrated system where at this point, Ticketmaster and Live Nation have exclusive contracts with sporting venues, about 70% of them nationwide. That is a monopoly, right? Because anything really over 50% is considered a monopoly. So they have contract with the biggest artists that we all love and many of them which they promote. So what people have to understand about these contracts with the artists is if you're a big artist, you can say, I want a certain percentage of the fees that you get, right? This is not unlike actors. When they have really high box office value or they're big stars, they can say to a studio, I want 5%, 10%, 20% of back end, right? Anything you guys make success of, we get a percentage of that. So big musicians like Taylor Swift can probably negotiate really good terms for themselves. But it's really those middle term artists and of course the smaller artists that just get screwed because Ticketmaster can basically say to them, well, we hold all the power. You can't perform at these venues because we have exclusive contracts with them. So if you don't go through us, you can't perform there and we're going to suppress your profit sharing, right? You're going to get a very small percentage of our profits because we're a monopoly and we can do that. So basically, if you're a small venue and you want a big artist, you basically have to go head to head with Ticketmaster and that is a battle they are not going to win. So the thing that people have to realize is not only does Ticketmaster screw over consumers like you and I as concert goers, they really screw over the artists as well. Because just as I explained, if you don't go through them as an artist, then you can't have your shows. If you're an artist like Taylor Swift, you need the huge sports stadiums. I think Pearl Jam, this is what happened in 1995 when they tried to go their own. They were trying to do concerts in basically fields, and because the infrastructure isn't there to hold thousands and tens of thousands of fans, it actually ended up being a fiasco and they had to cancel a lot of their concerts when they try to go head to head with Ticketmaster. So let's say hypothetically, if Taylor Swift wanted to bypass Ticketmaster and go to a venue like SoFi Stadium and say, I want to come and do a show here with you, and the venue would have to basically say to Taylor, you can pay us $1 billion and we cannot get out of this contract with Ticketmaster because we have an exclusive agreement with them that we cannot bypass them, basically. They have to be the company that sells the tickets. So not only is Ticketmaster screwing over consumers, they're really screwing over the artists as well. So there is actually nothing Taylor can do in this instance. And I want to make it clear, when I was saying in my last video that Ticketmaster was blaming Taylor Swift, I certainly am not blaming Taylor Swift. I can see from her statement that it was excruciating for her to have to go through this. And she asked Ticketmaster if they had the infrastructure and the capabilities to handle the volume of fans that would probably be coming out. And they said yes to her. They made her a promise and they broke their promise. So let's talk about what is probably going to happen, right? So in an ideal situation, in an ideal scenario, the Department of Justice would file a formal complaint alleging a Sherman Act violation, which is basically that would be accusing Ticketmaster of monopolization. And then Ticketmaster would have to show up in court and go through a trial. Most likely they will settle, like most court cases in the US, 90% or more settle. And ideally, I think what would happen is they would try to break up Ticketmaster and Live Nation and make them two separate companies again. And in this way, not only will the consumers get better service, lower prices, the artists would be able to get better contracts, kickbacks because there's more competition, right? Ticketmaster won't say, well, we're only going to give you 5%. If an artist like Taylor Swift can go to another company that will offer her 10%, then she might go with them. And thirdly, this is very important, is the employees of Ticketmaster or the venues will get better treatment because they will get paid better, they will get treated better, because now they can say, well, you guys are treating us poorly, we're going to go to a competitor. Right now, they don't have that choice. They only have Ticketmaster to work for. So if you separate the two companies, Live Nation and Ticketmaster would have to compete with each other again. That would drive down prices, right? Because they're competing with each other. It would allow artists to choose between the different companies. Let's say if there are two, do they go to Live Nation? Do they go to Ticketmaster? The employees would get treated better. So this is why competition is good. This is why monopolies are bad, because when there's one company that holds all the market share, they can do whatever they want. And I really truly believe nothing's going to happen, right? Like, I mean, just for Taylor Swift's concert at least. Unless Taylor Swift decides to add more dates, which I don't think she will. I mean, she's already has 52 dates. I mean, that's just a crazy number of days that she has to work. I'm not asking her to add more dates. I mean, like in a fantasy, yes, I would love to be able to see her. Anyway, this situation, I truly believe if anybody has the power to take down Ticketmaster, it would be Taylor Swift. So I'll keep you guys posted on what's going to happen. I'll come back and make another video as the Department of Justice moves ahead. If you guys didn't catch my last Taylor Swift video, make sure to catch it up here. It basically just breaks down the agony of the Taylor Swift Swifties had to go through to try to get tickets. This is Tyler, the Hollywood attorney. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.